Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to another session on the Global Foresight Summit. And for this session, we are having Lizan Perante-Calina, and she is the current Dean of the Development Academy of the Philippines, the Graduate School of Public and Development Management, but also the President of the Philippine Society for Public Administration and the Philippine Futures Thinking Society. Lizan is going to be presenting with Celine on Hiraya Foresight, the indigenous base of futures thinking. So, Lizan, I leave this on your side. Celine went out, so when she's back in, I will just put her into the presentation, okay?
All right. Thank you so much, Miel, for that kind introduction. So now I would like to present and share with you my presentation, and this is basically entitled Hiraya Foresight and Indigenous Base of Futures Thinking in the Philippines. And I would like to begin with the premise that futures thinking is the 21st century skill. And with that, if we cultivate this skill, wherein we make use of futures, we'll be able to craft better public sector policies and decisions. I'm looking at this because I am using public administration and governance lens when we use futures thinking and foresight in the Philippines. So that's basically the purpose of indigenizing futures thinking learning in the country. So the Hiraya Foresight is an ancient Filipino word which means the fruit of one's dreams, wishes, and aspirations. If we make use of this ancient Filipino word, we'll be able to contextualize our policies, our frameworks, and our mechanisms. And another feature of this presentation is the introduction of the phrase Hiraya Foresight. Hiraya Foresight as an indigenous, non-Western approach to studying, analyzing, and using the future. But then again, the indigenous approach or the Hiraya Foresight is a novel thing to do in the country, and that it requires that futures thinking learning has to be reinforced by three companion skills, namely futures thinking, knowledge co-creation, and phronetic leadership. In the next slide, you will see those three components, including, of course, Hiraya Foresight. So that makes it four components in this futures leadership and governance framework, which is basically a bid for a holistic approach to carving out desirable futures. There are other components that we need to look into. Like, for example, the abilities of a phronetic leader. So there are 6 abilities of a phronetic leader wherein this leader uses his tacit and explicit knowledge to make or set a good goal and make judgment based on goodness. And among the abilities, a leader should also know how to articulate the essence of the narratives. And not only that, he must provide a space, a shared context, an open space for everyone wherein they can articulate their aspirations, their dreams, their interests. And that is really towards the common good of the Filipino people. And in particular, the other thing that is really on contextualizing or indigenization is the well-being of the Filipino people. And we embed here the vision of the country to build a just and humane society, which is anchored in our motto and our Filipino values. But equally important also is stressing the importance of intergenerational responsibility doctrine. This one talks about that the present generation cares for the next generation. And this was penned in one Supreme Court decision where even those who are not in legal age, who are not taxpayers, they have the right to file a case when it concerns about the environment because they have the right to protect the present generation for the benefit of the future generation. So futures thinking actually is not new in the Philippines, but it was never been picked up much by many stakeholders, including the government. It was initially introduced by a few in the 1970s, in the 1980s, in the 1990s, and early 2000. And just very briefly, in the 70s, it was mentioned by former President Ferdinand Marcos, and there were no initiatives for that matter. But in 1991, there was this called World Future Studies Federation Conference held in Iloilo City. It's one of our cities in the Visayas region. And in 2012, the Center for Engaged Foresight was born, along with the Northwestern University of Loag, which they were able to set up this Philippine Foresight Center. And also, we have to go back a little further, and this is about the 1800s, the 1889 milestone, wherein our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal, was able to introduce this book, which is The Philippines, A Century Hence. So he mentioned about the future of the country in many sectoral reforms. And likewise, in the 20th century, sometime in 1981, there was this Philippine Futuristic Society, but later on, it was converted into a consulting firm. And in 2007, the one of the education center also offered this certificate course on futures thinking, and we call it the AIM, no, or Asian Institute Management. And likewise, NCPAG has this future-related publications. And I can say that our ambition natin, it's our development plan, talks about our future, but it did not use much of the tools that we are using in futures thinking. And now come 2019 and 2020, we're able to create this Philippine Futures Thinking Society and establish the Millennium Node. We are the 64th node. And of course, the DAP Graduate School, where I am Dean right now, we have a series of activities on futures thinking. And we offered, and still we are offering the certificate course on futures thinking. And we are now on our third batch. So far, these are the initiatives in the Philippines in a quick glance. But later on, I will show you also some of our initiatives. But the question again is, what makes us excited today in the Philippines about futures thinking and foresight? So it's really about the indigenization, the Hiraya Foresight. And Hiraya, when added by the word Hiraya Manawari, then it means it's a wish for someone. It's a good wish or a greeting to someone that may you have a good day, may you reach your dreams, and so on and so forth. So in the Philippines, actually, we have so many indigenous concepts. And there are these concepts like kapwa, other, pakikipagkapwa, relationship with others, galang, respect, malasakit, sacrifice, pananagutan, accountability, bayanihan, collective heroism, balikatan, collective lifting of a heavy load, weight on shoulders. So we at the DAP Graduate School, we established this Innovation Hub Lab, and there are 7 platforms here. And one of which is the Future Studies platform, where we promote the Hiraya Foresight. And another thing is the creation of the Phil Futures, which I mentioned earlier. And here we democratize futures thinking by igniting the Filipino Hiraya through the power of foresight. So we find it apropos that we use the word Hiraya as an indigenous concept to really spell out what we want when it comes to futures thinking and foresight. Thus, Hiraya Foresight. So again, it is an ancient word, the only word that gives the potential of the future, of tomorrow, to illuminate on the present. It talks about our kinabukasan, or future. And if we say Hiraya, it glows and radiates. And we don't even need a metaphor to describe what is Hiraya, no, or Hiraya Manawari. So with that, we have this so-called baybayin. No? And as you can see here on screen, we have this ancient Filipino root of baybayin. And the Hiraya was written in this kind of scripture by one tribe in Mindoro, and that is the Hanunuo Mangyan. So that is the baybayin of Hiraya. And why Hiraya? And what is this Hiraya all about? So Hiraya, as a wish to someone, as I mentioned earlier, means may you reach your dreams, may the wishes of your heart be granted, hope it comes to pass, or sana matupad ang iyong kahilingan at pangarap in our own language. And Hiraya has its multiple meaning significances and meaning implications. Hiraya is vision. Hiraya is about cooperation and collaboration. It is about anticipatory and agile leadership and governance. And Hiraya implies wisdom and ethics in action. And of course, Hiraya implies that the future can be studied, analyzed, researched, and planned. But the question again, the bigger question is how can we institutionalize and systematize Hiraya? So it's really through first education, through training, and through research. So when it comes to training and education, we have rolled out several certificate courses and master classes in the Philippines already. And for the research, we are doing this along with the sustainable development goals. So we have government budget for this, particularly from the Committee on SDGs, Innovations, and Futures Thinking. So we use futures thinking and foresight um, in evaluating SDGs, in realizing SDGs for the country. Another thing that we're doing, of course, is looking for its home. Where are we going to put foresight and futures thinking when it comes to a discipline, when it comes to education? So we find it apropos again that it should be in the field of public administration, because under the field of public administration, there is this public policy courses or modules, and we find it apropos again and very relevant that foresight should be part, foresight and futures thinking should be part of public policy analysis, of public policy making processes. Thus, the field of public administration is its home. But of course, the whole range of foresight and futures thinking activities covered foresight education, as I mentioned earlier, research, training, and advocacy. So we want this to be a movement, and we want to start futures thinking and foresight from the ground, not really from the government. So the government can really push for policies if there is a very good understanding of futures thinking from the ground, from the people, from the stakeholders, from the participants and beneficiaries of policies. So far in the past, it's been a year now, and of course, I'm using our background here, the Fiesta of Imagination, because right now we are celebrating our Fiesta of Imagination in collaboration with other government agencies and other institutions, because we are celebrating our first year anniversary this June 19. And we have a long month of activities, and it started last June 2. So here in this screen, as you can see, these are some of the presentations we made before the committee of the Senate Committee on SDGs, Innovation, and Futures Thinking. And we also provided a framework which we call the foresight, the strategic foresight framework for SDGs. And aside from that, we Hirayans, these are actually our story. These are the initial people who went to the Senate committee to present those strategic foresight framework and other activities and other insights. And we have another set of members. We are from the Philippine Futures Thinking Society. So with these Hirayans, dynamic Hirayans, we're able to really introduce a great range of collaboration and knowledge co-creation. And of course, we're able to tell our story to the whole world, that we are doing this Hiraya Foresight. As you can see, we're able to participate in that full spectrum features with Sherman, and also in UNESCO's activity, and that is the UNESCO Futures Literacy Summit. And just like yesterday, as I mentioned earlier, we had this Hiraya Foresight and exploration of an indigenous-based futures thinking. So these are some of the activities. We are also able to connect with the people in the academe, with state universities and colleges, and even with the youth. The Trash Talk is about solid waste management, and this was organized by college students. And what I'm glad also is the invitation that was extended to us by the NGOs, non-government organizations, civil society organizations, or the third sector. We're happy because in the first few months, we just concentrated with the government sector, with the universities, and now we have the private sector. So they're able to appreciate the importance of futures thinking and foresight in the futures of NGOs in the Philippines. And another, of course, is the futures of e-governance that will be on June 29. So our audience again are the youth now, are the students of public administration. And as part of Phil Features, of the Philippine Futures Thinking Society activity, it's a membership organization. So we have this so-called continuous capacity building, and we call it Hakbang. So all of our activities actually are named using an indigenous concept. Hakbang is a step, no, and every step counts, and it's towards the future. So we had that Hakbang, second installment, and the first installment was on dreams and disruptions. And another thing that we have at the Development Academy of the Philippines Graduate School is this Hiraya Talks. So we were graced by our colleagues, Tanya, Adam, and Oskan, a few months ago in this Hiraya Talks for our students from different sectors of the society. So this slide talks about our partners, our collaborators for the Fiesta of Imagination. So we have there both public and private sectors collaborating together towards this activity, so-called the Fiesta of Imagination. So, so in sum, Hiraya really is about our aspirations. No? Aspirations as Filipino people, that we aspire that in the coming days there will be a bright future for all of us, not only for this present generation, but for the next generation. So Hiraya is an appropriate indigenous concept as our linguistic visual icon. And we consider Hiraya as a foresight concept and approach wherein it subsumes other meanings and connotations. Hiraya is ethical. Hiraya is about communication. Hiraya is a personal relationship. Hiraya is about our ambition. It's about our vision. It's about our foresight. And of course, this indigenous concept actually opens up a veritable cachet of other indigenous concepts that are similarly rich in such meaning implications and meaning significances. And if we use this indigenous concept, it will somehow improve also our governance and public administration mechanisms. Because if we just mix the exogenous and indigenous concepts, somehow we have the overlap or some problems or challenges into it. But if we just look at the indigenous concept, we can contextualize very well based on our culture, based on our values, and based on our environment. So with that, Hiraya Foresight adds specific context, cultural particularities, local color, if not the features thinkers' quality ways of thinking. Like for example, we also use this when it comes to disaster risk and management. And it talks about perseverance, it talks about resilience, and it talks about difficulties. But at the end of the tunnel, or we have the so-called um, the hope, a bright future, and hope all of this will be finished very soon. So Hiraya sees the future not as a static object, but it is really a dynamic change agent, a change variable that makes things better, that improves the existing state of things, because Hiraya is participatory. It is collaborative. That is why when we decided to use Hiraya Foresight as our base, indigenous based in futures thinking, we concluded that it is only through going back to our indigenous roots that we find wisdom in our own local country. So that's why we have this Hiraya Foresight. And of course, as we always say at the Philippine Futures Thinking Society, as we democratize futures thinking in the Philippines, it is now really the right time to discover and tap our local knowledge and wisdom. That is why Hiraya Foresight becomes a suitable indigenous base of futures thinking. So that ends my presentation, Miel. Thank you so much. Hiraya Manawari.
Hello, welcome back, Lizan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So now you can stop your sharing your screen, so you are able to see the comments that you are getting and a couple questions and shout outs in the comment section. You just go through them and you let me know which one you want to answer, and I put that on the screen. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can see now. I can see at the comments, friend. Yeah, rather. Okay, there we go. Right. So yes, there are a lot. We have from Jose. Great presentation. It is fantastic to have you. Yes, thank you for making us part of the MP project of MP family, and thank you for your warm congratulations. And also direct democracy somehow, because yes, Arki, we are looking at this as a movement. We want to really the democratization, the first stage, that is the first stage really. We wanted to start with the citizens. So the higher the level of understanding, the higher level of appreciation, and there is appreciation, then we can push forward towards institutionalization and lobbying it with our policymakers. Yeah. And from Merle Bryan, yes, from Cape Town, hello there. Sending out a wish in the spirit of Hiraya to unite Indigenous innovators around the world to help explore new pathways of light and hope. Thank you for that. And we have from Marlon from the Philippines, considering policies institutionalizing and utilizing Hiraya Foresight, can we fuse this with legislation, leveraging on legislative Hiraya or legislative foresight? Well, that's a very good question. This is interesting because there are so many local legislators and also local leaders who are asking this question, the same line of thought. And they're asking, how can we better influence policymakers to embed Hiraya foresight and futures thinking in policy making? So actually, this is a skill. No, this is a 21st century skill that we need to embed or we need to cultivate in order for us to craft better policies. So really, no, futures thinking is really open. No, it's highly flexible, so it can be applied with all sectors actually. So legislative is one, and that's really our target. The legislation, not only the local but also the national, because our laws must spell out the Hiraya foresight that what we are doing right now. So I hope we'll be able to work on this, Marlon. And from Merle also, yeah, from Scott. Hi, Scott. I love the notion of returning to indigenous thinking to approach the future and even technology. What is the greatest challenge in negotiating traditional thought and colonized or tech notions? Well, of course, the colonization part, no, it's somehow very challenging because you cannot easily dismiss that colonial mentality. We are also looking on the so-called synthetic culture. Synthetic culture is about the colonization part, about the mindset that we have, that we always prefer imported products than local products. And in our policies in the Philippines, for example, it's very specific that one of the 8 norms of conduct for public government and officials is to consume and produce locally and consume locally produced products. So it's really there, no? And we cannot easily dismiss, especially with the young people. But still, I believe it's really about changing the mindset. Changing the mindset that we have. It's high time to look at our indigenous concepts and really conceptualize or contextualize and reframe our mind. Reframe our mind. It's about changing the mindset. So we need to contextualize our policies, our frameworks, and we've been experiencing that. We have so many policies coming from the Western countries. What's the only failure there? It's I'm not saying that's bad, but the failure there is we're not able to contextualize that based on our behavior, based on our cultural, based on organizational culture. So if we can do that, even if we have this Western framework, if we can just make a composite framework by embedding an indigenous concept, then we'll be able to really, you know, be successful in this advocacy, which is indigenizing foresight and other frameworks. And from Darwin, how would you assess the reach of features literacy across our educational system, across levels? All the best. Rapidly, just a rapid appraisal. And it's still anecdotal in the Philippines because we have not conducted really an evidence-based study for this. Um, as as we can see, no, and based on the invitations that we receive a number of invitations from state universities and colleges. That's one. Also from local governments, and now from the youth sector. So the students in the universities, like college students, they are inviting us to talk about this, to illuminate them on what is Hiraya Foresight and what is features thinking. And another is, of course, on the NGOs, on the third sector, the civil society organizations. They're very interested, and along with that, also the interest of the corporations. No, so that's really about the corporate foresight. So I think the reach right now, as we are still on the first level, and that is democratizing. And if we level up, that would be another thing. No, it's we we receive wonderful comments. We receive wonderful, of course, well, interest. No, the interest is there, and it's really inspirational. So I think we'll be able to pursue this further and really embed this in the system. Okay. Another is from Erky, government and public sector as part of hybrid well-being ecosystem. Yeah, government. Yes, government. Well, government is always there, you know, and they must be part of the well-being ecosystem. But government alone can't do it. We need other sectors of the society, the CSOs, the business organizations, and other stakeholders that can play a big part in policy and decision making in the country. Okay, so I guess these are all the questions.
Yes, Lizan, you got all the questions in the list answered. So basically, what we are going to do is just wait a little bit, just in case someone else is writing anything. But I wanted to say to you that Hiraya is a super interesting concept, and all the things. One of the biggest things that we've been hearing during the last days is how we can go back to decolonizing everything that the Western culture colonized in the last centuries. So going to the First Nation, the people of the places that were colonized, they already have also their own visions and images of the futures. Those were broken centuries ago by the Europeans. In your case, in the Philippines, it was us, it was Spain. So sorry for that. But the point is that at this moment in time, we are starting to acknowledge that the diversity of the world is very high. It's very, very diverse, and we need to embrace different ways of approaching the images of the future that might differ completely from the Western view of how the future is going to be, given that economic perspective of the Western societies and all that. So it's super interesting to see what you are doing, the Fiesta of the Imagination, the Hiraya concept, the Feel Future Society, introducing all the concept of futures into the students and graduate, and also all the work you're doing also with the different governments and entities to put the Philippines quite ahead of countries in terms of foresight, like, for example, the one I live in right now, like Spain. So we are quite ahead using foresight at all levels than we are. So we are going to take one last question from Sally that just came in. And I'm going to put that in here on the screen for you. And with that question, we are going to say bye to the audience, okay?
Hi, Sally. Nice seeing you here. Thank you for that question. Well, what forces are working against Hiraya Foresight that we need to account for and understand? I think it's really the system right now. We have to, well, this too, no, the education, the training, the advocacy, and the system must go hand in hand together. Otherwise, what will be the use of education and training if our system will not adopt? So it's again changing the mindset of our leaders in the government that they need to embed and look at the importance of foresight and futures thinking and be part of the culture. And that's one thing that we really hope. And right now we are working on that, really trying to influence and look at the look at the importance really. So right now we have a training with our government officials, and that is for local legislators. But again, they only have a term like 3 years, for example. So that's another thing. No? So come 2022, we will change leadership. So the reason why we have this Philippine Futures Thinking Society is that it will serve as a stabilizer, as a fulcrum. If ever leadership will change, still foresight and futures thinking is there. So it's really an advocacy that will just go on and on until we'll be able to really embed and influence everyone, no? If not everyone, but almost, no, everyone in the country. So thank you for that. Sally, thank you.
So thank you, Lizan. It's a pleasure to have you here. So thank you so much for your insight and the presentation. We are going to wrap the session here, and everyone else, please stay on the website, and we go now on a new session on the Global Foresight Summit. So see you all back in around 5 minutes, more or less.
Thank you, Biel. It's my pleasure.